I know Coming to the Table, RVA is presenting this, but this is really Brown Grove story and presentation. And so they have a story that needs to be shared, especially seeing what's going on now in the country, especially around environmental racism and redlining. So before we get started, a couple things. Number one, Hyatt, who's been helping us get everyone set up, will be putting everyone on mute except the speakers. So throughout the presentation, we ask that you stay on mute. And if you have questions, please put them into the chat area. And then we will pick up, or I will be picking up the questions and kind of putting them out to our presenters throughout the presentation. And if we have some time and depending on the crowd, we may open it up so people can ask live. But right now, given the numbers that have registered, that might be a little difficult. All right, so please keep yourself on mute throughout the presentation. And as I also said earlier, you will be recorded so that we can hopefully send this out to folks who weren't able to participate with us tonight. So with that, we'll get started. All right, so let me get my screen. Yes.
I just wanted to mention that I've made some folks from the Brown Grove community co-hosts, not because you have to do any kind of a job, but just because it makes it so that your name is closer to the top of the participant list for the purpose of if you need help unmuting or to spotlight you or something like that.
Thank you.
All right.
Sure.
So I know a lot of folks on this call are Coming to the Table members, but I'm sure there are other folks who are not. So those who are not aware of Coming to the Table, and we are the Richmond chapter of that national organization. We are a national organization whose members work to acknowledge and work to heal the wounds rooted in the history of slavery and the many forms of racism that it spawned. We advance our mission through the use of 4 methodologies. We like to call them legs, and that's truth-telling, connecting, healing, and action. Throughout every month, we offer multiple events such as movie screenings, book reading. Our signature event is third Tuesday, and we also have a program called Law. And all of these programs are designed to educate, heal, uplift, and hopefully inspire our participants to action. So one of the really big points you'll hear a lot of in all of our presentations this year is how can you take what you've learned into action? And hopefully this presentation today will inspire you to action and how you can help Brown Grove fight what they're facing. One other thing, on January 18th, we're really excited. We have our National Day of Racial Healing program, and that will be at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Central, or 4:30 Pacific.
Pacific, yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
This is going to be a really great uplifting online concert featuring the inspiring social activist, singer, songwriter, Chris Matthews. So Hyatt or Danita, do you want to add anything about that?
I was going to say that I don't want to take up a lot of valuable time right now, but what I could do is put something in the chat, put a link in the chat so that you can register to come. And it's going to be live streamed on our YouTube channel and on our public Facebook page. As Tina said, on the National Day of Racial Healing, January 18th at 7:30 Eastern and 4:30 Pacific. And I love this artist. She's just an incredible artist, musician, activist. She calls herself the poster child for intersectionality. So I
Right.
hope you come.
And thank you, because you were the right person to give that information about Chris. I will only add that she is coming here to Richmond, Virginia to energize what we are doing here as far as our actions in Richmond and all over the state. She's as I understand, a Washingtonian. She lives in Washington, but she is seeing, she knows how hard people are working here, and we would be just thrilled to see the people on this call together that special night as we join together in racial healing and bringing some of these actions into fruition. So thank you for coming to the table, RVA.
Thank you.
And that was our co-CEO, Danita Ferranti Green.
So, and all of these things, if you check out our events page, which is the link here, you will be able to see what we're offering this month. So, with that, we'll move on to our next part of the program. So, I am so excited to present this program. I haven't been working with this community long, but the amount of work they've been able to do in the time they've had to do it and lead full lives and try to fight a very large corporation. And Wegmans is just one component, right? So the bigger issue is just the encroachment of their land by the county, and the county allowing that to happen. And they'll talk more to that in the presentation. So I'm so excited to have them. And so tonight, on the call, we have Makshima, who's going to talk a bit about the Freedmen community and probably a little bit about the environmental issues that Brown Grove is facing. We'll have Diane Smith and Charles Moore talking a little bit about history. We'll have Fawn and Alonda talking more about traffic and living near the area, just the day-to-day issues they face in living in that area. Bonica talking about where we've been, what we've done, and Renata about how you can help. And Renata has been kind of the main point person I've been working with a lot on in the program. I mean, around getting ready for this program, but also around just what's going on in the Brown Grove community. But the community itself is just a great community, and I encourage you after this conversation that you reach out. We'll put some information out there. The African American Redress Network has a meeting every other Monday that allows those who want to help this community to join and figure out how they can jump in there and utilize their resources and their connections and their organizations to help Brown Grove, work with what's going on in their community. So if you have resources, you have the time, here's your opportunity for action. So with that, we're gonna first show you a little video about Brown Grove and what gives you a good little synopsis of what's going on. And hopefully you can hear this.
I used to walk these fields. I used to walk these fields with my grandpa. We used to pick blackberries. My grandparents' house right there that they built with their hands, but it will be surrounded by Wegmans now. Brown Grove is an old community. We're over 150 years old. We were started right after the Civil War by freed slaves. We're not just a bunch of people that just happened to move to the same area. We were born here. Our ancestors are in the soil here, literally. Air pollution is definitely a concern because of all the trucks, and we're already close to 9 to 5. The biggest concern is the water quality.
Okay. Okay, hang on. So looks like you guys are hearing it, but not seeing it. So just give me 1 minute. Sorry
Yeah.
about that. Now, are you all able to see the video now?
Yes.
Okay, try this again.
I used to walk these fields with my grandpa. We used to pick blackberries. It's my grandparents' house right there that they built with their hands, but it will be surrounded by Wegmans now. Brownfield is an old community. We're over 150 years old. We were started right after the Civil War by freed slaves. We're not just a bunch of people that just happened to move to the same area. We were born here. Our ancestors are in the soil here, literally. Air pollution is definitely a concern because of all the trucks, and we're already close to 9 to 5. The biggest concern is the water quality. Does we feel like we're a dumping ground for industrial growth? We're hoping that the folks in Washington will have more of a structured process for their state to have to go through that actually really looks out for the community, to really put a hard line down to say, okay, this is it. You know, you can no longer do any more to this community.
All right. All righty. So into our next share here. Alrighty, so what you saw was the a quick video about Brown Grove intro video, and you can go and view that again later on via this link. But we'll provide you all of these links, so don't worry about it. After the presentation tonight, we'll gather all the links and send that out to all the participants tomorrow around dinner time. And you'll be able to pull all these links and watch these at your own leisure. All righty. So next, I really, really, really want to introduce, and I'm excited to introduce the Brown Grove community. And they are going to talk a little bit about their community. But first, we're going to start off with Ashima on the Freedmen community. Do you need for us to share anything for you, or are you good to go? And you might want to take her off mute.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm a little, taken aback to be opening this, because really what we're going to learn about Brown Grove's history will come from the people who follow, who are the descendants of the free Black people who built this community. What I will say, in Virginia, as the first English colony, first place of the Atlantic slave trade on this continent, and first place that the English came and took over lands that belonged to Native peoples, Virginia should be, a center of the history of people who were enslaved here. And there has been concerted efforts on the part of counties, both right after the end of the Civil War and the forced emancipation. So most people think about emancipation as something that happened from a law, but actually in Virginia, it was right next to, it had the surrender at Appomattox, and the federal troops just followed those Confederate troops with arms, taking them back to Richmond, and they passed through the counties that had enslavement still going on. And so they forced the plantation owners at, using military, weapons to free their slaves. And in some of those cases, those plantation owners killed their slaves rather than to free them. So this story is deep in the soil of the rural counties of Virginia that are now being disproportionately targeted for all manner of toxic polluting infrastructure. And many people sort of, when they think of a Wegmans facility, they think of going to Wegmans, getting some great pastries or something. And really, this family-owned business is going to be as large as the Pentagon, 6 floors tall, the largest building in the county, and it's going to be on historic wetlands. And this is important because this has been determined to be a historic district, but we just learned recently that the wetlands were a huge part of that history, that because this part of Hanover County was so filled with wetlands, it was a place that runaway slaves could take refuge, and a place that the tobacco growers and corn growers throughout the state that were making their fortunes through enslavement labor actually couldn't grow as much in those wetlands areas. So that it became a kind of center for free Black history in the state. And we've learned this only by the process of what you would say is ethnographic research, just asking people to tell their families' histories, locate those sites on the ground, those homes that they built, the church that they built, the school that they built. The Brown Grove School that site is encompassed by the present Wegmans facility. As most of you know, the Brown Grove Baptist Church is literally across the street and will be deeply impacted. All the roads that Wegmans wants to fill with daily tractor trailer emissions coming in and out of this facility are on historic roads that were built by the free people who used them. They were first, of course, trails. They were maybe horses went on them. They became gravel. Then they finally became paved. But those are part of the historic district. All of those roads constitute historic resources. And the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation wrote a bit of a chiding letter to the Army Corps of Engineers and to Wegmans, saying that you can't just say that the church isn't going to be impacted or the people aren't going to be impacted by the Wegmans facility when every single part of this community, including the entire Wegmans site, is the historic district. Those wetlands and those paths that cross through it, where they just found a midden, how shall I say, an archaeological find of glass bottles and other things that were piled together really near the school site. And there's been a lot of concern because of the way that Wegmans treated that. They didn't allow people to come to the site and see those items in person until later. There's a huge concern that there are unmarked burials there, and others will talk about this who have direct experience and know that that's the case. But the firm that Wegmans hired to do the archaeological research, to do the excavation, to be near when the excavation is happening, have zero experience with free Black built communities and free Black burial practices, as well as during enslavement practices that would be on this land. So they are saying that they're complying, but in every way, they're not really respecting the fact that this is a significant place of history, that the Virginia Department of Historic Resources Board granted historic eligibility to, and that confers a protective status under the Historic Preservation Act. Yet in every case, you could say that this federal agency, the Army Corps, and the applicant is just checking off boxes of what, you know, they're saying that they're doing, but they're doing it with, as you could say, the expertise, the tools that are not honed for the job. They're using people who have no experience, not the technical expertise to do ground penetrating radar well, to interpret what you see, because it's just looking at sort of lines on the ground. And so you have to have the eyes and expertise for it. So time and time again, the impacts on this place are coming from people who are saying they're all of, you know, want to be good neighbors or fulfilling what their legal responsibilities are as the Army Corps is supposed to do, but they're doing in a sense the least possible. So these places in Virginia, such as Brown Grove, that have already been designated historically eligible and are significant, must be protected by all of us. This is our Virginia history. This is the true history. This is then, because it's Virginia history, and Virginia played such a huge role, having so many plantation owners become president and enshrine the rights of corporations in our Constitution for that reason. We all have a stake in this as a part of our US history as well. So next you'll hear from the people whose families actually were the ones who bravely put down their roots, faced all of the discrimination that happened to all of the formerly enslaved people and free people by the white people still living there and the systems in place. Had to fight for every one of the amendments, giving them the right to vote. And then that finally had to be enforced by the 15th Amendment, which said that federal troops would enforce that right in these counties. These rural counties are deeply threatened by development for mega landfills, for this Wegmans distribution center, for frac gas pipelines, because they're considered sacrifice zones. This is in all of our interests because these all contribute to climate change, and climate change's root driver is environmental injustice and these sightings. If all of this was borne by the people who buy all the things and drive all the cars and consume the most, then none of this would be happening. We would have renewables right now. But it's all been driven because of state, federal, and local processes, permit processes that grant these permits to these polluting developments, primarily in places of minority, majority, or majority historic communities. Thank you.
All right, well, Lakshima did a great job of kind of telling you what we're facing or what Brown Grove is facing. But before we continue that conversation, I think it would be a little helpful to talk a little bit about the history of Brown Grove. And so I'm going to bring up the pictures, a few pictures from the, and there are a few. I would highly recommend that you check out this article here, Brown Grove, Preserving a Way of Life. And again, we'll provide you those links. And it's a great write-up around various individuals within the Brown Grove community and how they see not just Wegmans, but how the whole industrial encroachment of their community has impacted them. So I highly recommend that you read that. But I'm going to turn it over to the members of Brown Grove. Tell us a little bit about your history. And so I believe this is Diane and Charles. So tell us a little bit about the matriarch of the community. Well, the matriarch who founded the community.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Diane Smith Drake, and I am a former Brown Grove resident. I was a resident for 60 years there, and I'm just here to share just a brief summary of the history of Brown Grove. We should have some links in the chat room for additional information, but I just wanted to just kind of piggyback off some of the stuff that was already said, and just to give you an idea of what Brown Grove actually looks like. Brown Grove is basically a rural and residential community, about 1,000 acres, located southeast of the town of Ashland. It includes about 100 or 120 buildings and homes. Some parts some parts are flat, except where it dips into the area of the ravines, referred to as the slashes. There are swampy areas, and the Topotomy Creek runs along the southeastern edge of the boundaries. Now, Ash Cake Road is the main throughway, which is an 18th century east to west transportation route. Brown Grove community was established by free slaves during the Reconstruction after the Civil War. Families worked and lived on local farms and practiced religion as they were allowed under the restrictions of the system of slavery. However, they had a vision of hope whereby families prayed for a better life for themselves and their children, and they wanted to own their own land and to build their own homes and have a place to worship where they could freely worship their own God. So in 1870, their faith and endurance was blessed with 6 visionary men who decided that they wanted this better life also, and for everybody else that they encountered. So they had a vision to build a brush harbor, which is nothing but branches. And they succeeded in doing this and worship in the brush harbor for 3 years. Until then, about 1893, our ancestor, Edmund Brown, paid $15 for about 1.5 acres of land and donated it to build a church. As time passed on, a wooden church was built and was named the Brown Grove School. The Brown Grove Church, I'm sorry. And several years later, the wooden church was destroyed by fire. Another wooden church was built, and that too was destroyed by fire. It just seemed like there was a history back then of churches and homes being burned down. We can assume about who they may have been that started these fires, but we have no pure record of them, such as the Ku Klux Klans. We have no evidence that it really was them, but it was a time period when they were going through Black and brown communities and doing this sort of violence through the neighborhood. In 1927, after all the churches that had burned down, there was a 2-room school that was built across the street from the church that had been burned down. And across the street was a 2-room school used for education. However, we had to use it also for a place of worship during that time. There were many families that opened their homes, and they were able to worship inside their homes. Some people actually worship in the Slash Church worship place. I understand that many of our ancestors helped build the historic Slash Church. But praise be to God, in 1945, our community members built a modern day brick church, which stood the test of time and served as a place of worship for us today. Now, the 2-room school lost its way by fire in the 1950s, but some of the piers remain visible today and has been granted eligibility for its historic significance by the Department of Historic Resources. The property is currently owned by Wegmans. The church has always been the light and hope of our community. Most of our descendants were enslaved and were freed. Caroline and Jefferson Morris, Caroline was the midwife of the Brown Grove community, and her husband Jefferson worked on the railroad. Now, she was the monarch of the community. I heard that she was a stern and feisty lady, but she was affectionately called the mother of Brown Grove, and everybody respected her. And she is actually my great-great-grandmother. So I'm proud to have known her history. I know my grandmother, Susie Walker, that was her grandmother. And we used to go over to Hanover Courthouse and pay the taxes on the land that she owned. She had 13 children. I'm sorry, she had 11 children, and 11 children, and that land was divided between all of her children. Now, I want to say that we must carry on her legacy, the legacy of our ancestors and the love and sacrifices that they had for their family. They didn't have a textbook knowledge, but they had good common sense and wisdom. And that brought them a long way. Their faith in God served them tremendously, but they struggled. And the only thing they had was oral history that they could teach and tell their families, and to take heed to some of the things that they knew that were wrong. So a legacy was left for us to carry on the footprints of our ancestors. And that's what we need to do. Right now, our modern day church celebrates 151 years. Our community is the center of that church, the involvement. So we have to honor all of that. And they stood on other people's shoulders. Now we're standing on their shoulders, but we need to carry the legacy on, and we need your help. So thank you so much for this time, and I hope that you have gained some knowledge of Brown Grove.
Thank you for sharing. That's a great story. And just out of curiosity, just to help folks understand, when you think of Brown Grove, how large of an area was that when you think of your ancestors and the community? So, I know it starts at 95.
It starts at 95, but the area, the boundaries extended past Ashgate Road. It extended to Lewistown Road, which is right off of 95. It extended to Egypt Road, which is in the community. Egypt Road was also called Morris Road, named after Caroline Morris and Jefferson Morris. So it's a lot of history there. And also parts of Sliding Hill Road are our boundaries of the historic district. So it's pretty large.
Okay. And as you've lived there quite some time, I'm sure you've seen the industrial encroachment that's been happening in your community. What are some of the items that you've seen or industries that you've seen appearing?
Well, I can remember in the early 60s, 69, 70, I used to walk. I lived on Lewistown Road, and we used to walk to the church, to Brown Grove Church. We used to cut through the paths to my grandmother's house and my aunts and uncles and cousins, and we would ride our bicycle, and there was just no danger there. And it was all like a community, and everybody, it was your mother, everybody. You did something wrong, you knew about it. They knew about it before you got back home. So yeah, I mean, it was a good time, and it was safer than the 95, the truck stop came, and the bridge came, the overpass came, and that cut down a lot of safeness there. So we weren't able to walk the roads, ride our bicycles like we used to. And then we have now so much more coming into the community. The precast and the truck stop and the let's see, what else was it? The airport. The airport also came in the early 70s, I believe. And they ran some of our families out of their community there. But you'll hear about that later from one of the other members of Brown Grove.
And just one more question. So 95, did that split the Brown Grove community?
It did.
So was that a whole, okay. So
it did. That bridge overpass split, and we were all part of Brown Grove. But since that bridge divided some of us, Hanover County doesn't recognize that part of Brown Grove as historic or as Brown Grove. They don't even recognize it as Brown Grove. And that's a shame.
So they only recognize, if you're looking at a map, the right side or the east side of 95 of Brown Grove. They don't recognize the west side of 95 of Brown Grove.
Right, correct.
Did not know that. Wow.
Yep. They'll recognize it when they need to recognize it to benefit them. It's now profit over people.
Okay. And just one other thing, we're talking about a diamond-shaped area, and that area has probably what, tripled, quadrupled in value because of its proximity now to 95?
Quadruple, I would think.
Okay.
I mean, it's prime real estate, but it's our real estate, our history.
Gotcha. All righty. So, wow. And again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. I am looking at the chat for questions, and so we'll bring them up if we can during the conversation, or if not, toward the end when we have a Q&A session. So, wow.
Charles, did you have anything that you wanted to add? Okay, I take that as a no.
Or he might be on mute.
He's on mute.
Yeah, let me take him off mute. Well, I'm asking you to unmute, Charles. So you just want to unmute if
Yeah, I
you
did
have
that.
anything to add. And Diane has talked to the airport, but also in that area, there's a concrete facility and the landfill. And I think there was a permit, and Renata, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a permit for additional landfill?
Yes, they just applied to expand the landfill, but Charles's mic is unmuted now.
Okay, great.
Good afternoon, rather good evening. I'm Charles Morris, great-grandson of Caroline and Jefferson Morris. In 1946, as a child of 3, I was awed by the community. Everything was green and beautiful and so big, my eyes could not contain myself. Looking around, it was early spring. Well, into spring. I said the middle of spring, because the strawberry blooms were out. There were blueberries around, and of course I'd get a little jar for mama and go ahead and pick some and put them in there. But everything was so beautiful. The only thing I noticed was the road itself, and I want to say a wagon trail, because I had spent some time in Richmond because mama didn't want to come to Brian Groves out in the woods, she said, but daddy convinced her to come. And the road was it's kind of sandy, and grass was growing in the road. You had a lot of potholes and ditches. I don't think anyone could, a car, I thought, would not negotiate anything like that. And my uncle, one of my uncles, Lily's husband, his name was Henry Tyler. He had a horse and buggy. And later I learned that he was the one who kept everything looking nice, pristine and stuff. He would have a wagon and a horse, and he'd come in and cut all the fields. Then you could see far, far away, I would tell myself. And he would cut that, and every year he would come through and cut back the forest with his horse and buggy and the other tools that he had. It was really beautiful. The only thing, another thing I did not like that I really noticed was, I said, no cars can come down here, but because the road didn't look right. But Daddy had someone's truck, and that brought us down there. So later I did see a car coming down through that trail, but they'd stop. They wouldn't go all the way. They'd pass our house and go a little bit further down this road. I guess this road was about at least 2 miles or 3 miles long. Okay, from the beginning, from Ashkay Road to the end of the road. Okay, my grandfather, Jeff Morris Jr., he would always complain, particularly at tax time. He would go to Hanover and he paid the taxes for all his sisters, because there were about 4 of the sisters still lived in on Egypt Road. Everybody called it Egypt. And so forth. So he would pay the tax, and he would fuss with them because we needed a road. Okay, so finally, I guess about, I want to say almost 8 or 9 years later, Hanover sent this great big Caterpillar truck and machine, I better say, and that was exciting for me because I hadn't, a little child, around about 8 or 9 now, seeing that Caterpillar come on down there, and it did make things look better, but they didn't put anything on it. They just left a dirt road, this long dirt road coming down there, which looked good. We used to go out and play in the road. Mama would make us come back because we'd mess up our shoes, our feet, so she made us, told us we could go barefoot and play in the road. But whenever it rained, and boy, did it rain. When it rained, we couldn't go to school because of the wetlands down there. The water filled the road, those low areas of the road, so we couldn't go to school. And as a result of that, I didn't pass the 1st grade. My mom told me not to go in the woods like my big brothers could and get to school. But that was a tragedy for me, and I'll always remember that. The good things about the community, you had plenty of people to play with. We played cowboys and Indians, say with 10 on this side and 10 on that side, and we just played and played. We had so much fun because of all of the children who lived there. Of course, we didn't have a supermarket to go through to, so therefore we went to Ashland to do the shopping. When we needed something simple, like a 7-Eleven thing, then we'd go to Jackson's store. And there were paths and trails that led to everywhere in Brand Rose. Any point, there was a trail that you take. And some of those trails are still there. The larger ones are still there. But I guess with Wegmans coming, they won't be there that long. But it was just wonderful. Whenever we went to church, there was a trail. Just go across the road and go on there. And next thing you know, bam, you had to church, because we often went to Sunday school. Mom saw that. Homecoming was wonderful because all the ladies they cooked, and it was dynamite. I'd go from one table to another and get a plate, particularly the sweets. But it was so wonderful there. I had a chance to meet with the majority of Caroline Morris's children. Among the last to leave was Mary. And she always had the most beautiful smile you could see. Whenever you went to her house, boy, you want something, you hungry? You want something to eat? Come on over here and eat something. All of them would do that. And like Diane said, you couldn't do anything in Brand Rose or in Ashland School, because I went to John M. Gannett School. That was a segregated school. And I dare say 25 to 30% of those students there were cousins. So you didn't get in any fight if you got in a fight with somebody other than a cousin, and the cousin would come to your rescue. But I had a wonderful time there during the era. During my senior year in '62, and we used to catch the bus, number 19, in my Aunt Lily's house. And we used to go there and catch the bus. Sometimes we'd miss the bus because we were so busy talking and playing, we didn't hear the bus blow, and the bus driver would leave us. But back to my senior year, my brother got a letter. My older brother got a letter, and it said, Andrew Morris, come to the courthouse, which was in Ashland at that time, and get your check. And my brother said, hey, what are they trying to do here? And he explained to my dad and his brother that the family need to get a lawyer. But then my dad and his brothers and sisters said, no, they want the money. This was about, I'd say, he said about from $700 on down, or something like that, either $700 or $600. And they all went to Hanover and got that check and signed for it. Later, we found out that it was the Air Park Association. They bought that land for little of nothing from my dad, his sisters, and so forth, and probably everybody else in the Morris family, because that was Caroline Morris's descendants. And hence, that was the start of the airport. They got that money, they got that land for little of nothing. Because all along I asked my dad, can I get a piece of that land? And he said, boy, that land is all tied up. We can't break up that land. But they did. They broke it up with money. And they did it in such a sneaky way. And I dare say that probably what has happened to other land, like that land now that is the Wegmans site. Who knows where that land really came from? Back in the day, well, not back in the day, back in, say about 15 years ago, I went to the courthouse and I researched the land of Caroline Morris. I asked questions. They would show me where this book is, where that book is. Okay, they showed me the book that said white receipts for taxes, black receipts for taxes. I went through there, particularly for Caroline Morris. I say again, Caroline Morris. They would have a Caroline, some kind of Carrie Morris. They would mess with her name, and I knew they knew her name. And they would So 1 year, they'd have her with 5 acres. Next year, 16 acres. Next year, nothing. Skip a couple of pages. I mean, go through a couple of pages and you'll find her come back with 20 acres. Go back, go a little bit further, 4 acres. And that was very confusing. I said, what is happening to this land here? I didn't dare to go up to the desk to ask what was going on with those books. But it appeared that Caroline Morris had a lot of land, but they were getting the taxes, but they were not recording it. So obviously they were pocketing the money. But this was during I assumed the position of administrator for Caroline Morris's estate. But many things have gone on. I left from Hanover, not yet Hanover, and Brian Groves, and there were no road signs. The only road sign was Ash Cake Road, and that was at the beginning of number 1 highway. You come all the way down and leave it and hit Peaks. Then I believe they had a sign there, but it was only 2 signs. So there are some improvements. That's the biggest improvement that I see. They have road signs down, but let me go back a little bit. That road, when I graduated from John M. Gannon School, they finally put rocks on the road. There were no gravel on the road whatsoever. All you had was a dirt road. And then they put in those pipes so the water could run under the road. That was, I would say, 10 years before we had a decent road there. And this is Hanover. Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, there are a couple of questions. So we have an individual who's on the call who says she's originally from Houston and also has a neighborhood called Freeman's Town, where original descendants still reside and are fighting to save their neighborhood despite decades of efforts to undermine that once thriving community, even though it is registered as such. And she was just curious, how do we see, or how have you experienced the preservation designation? Has it been useful at all? Because she hasn't necessarily experienced that. So moving into Renata, I know she's done a lot of work and she's been running some of the slides of the community behind the scenes as Charles was speaking. And Renata, I guess, quick question, have you seen that been helpful at all? Or has Hanover pretty much ignored that designation? And you might be on mute. You are on mute.
That's a question for Diane to answer. Diane, would you want to take that?
Just remember, you got to come off mute.
I'm getting the hang of it. I don't think that Hanover has completely ignored the significance of a historic preservation since it's more visible now. We've had some, some limited time trying to get people on board with Brown Grove being a historic community, because at first Hanover didn't recognize Brown Grove as anything. We had to prove to them that the 2-room school existed. And I knew back in the day, they had to know that that 2-room school existed. And thereby, I mean, they didn't do their homework and Wegmans didn't do their homework because they didn't acknowledge the 2-room school. But I want to say now, I think people are a little careful now because they know that Brown Grove is considered historically by documentation. We are listed now locally, a historic church and a historic community. I'm not sure everybody's on board with that, but I do believe that it has stopped some people or slowed them down to realize that we're here. Brown Grove is here. We're not going anywhere, and we're climbing to higher heights.
I'd like to just amplify too what Diane just said. The Historic Preservation Act doesn't have any deep enforceability, but I will say that once this district was, recognized that it was eligible for the national and the local record, and now actually is in the process of working on that nomination process, that it really has slowed things down. Wegmans had to stop. It was excavating. It had to stop excavating that day that they found things. They had to go through a process. The Army Corps of Engineers, I think, is engaging a little bit more, but they can't overturn the permit that they did out of process order, which the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, which is a federal entity, chided them for. You knew that this was maybe not designated at that time, but stakeholders were telling you from day one. So now they're a little bit, they're more engaged, and there've been a few more meetings, and Wegmans has had to acknowledge that this is a historic district. So it's a public relations as well. It just kind of creates sort of a substantive recognition of its significance. And it's only the second in the state that has ever, of a free Black built community, that's received this eligibility status, and will probably be the first to get through the nomination process, because Brown Grove is really working hard. I don't know if any of you can kind of gather from this how much the people of Brown Grove have done that is pioneering, and the ways in which they've worked together, just a few people, powerful efforts put in, focus, have really accomplished a lot. And one of them is this historic eligibility. So it doesn't exactly, mean that Wegmans is in chains, but it does provide a lot of substance to what they're doing and make it, even more of a travesty.
So I think this is why it's very important. I think someone made a comment about communities banding together, because we're all seeing the same thing happen in communities of color and poor communities. We all have to band together and figure out how to fight this. And once you figure out how to do something, how do you get that information to another community so they don't have to start from ground zero, right? They already have the information they need to keep moving forward. So anybody who's on this call who has experienced this in their communities, and they've had success in approaching this in a specific way, please feel free to share it in the chat, or send us or put an email in the chat. You can directly send in a chat to me or to Renata, so we can then circle back after the call and kind of find out how you approach some things. The next piece, we'll move on here. The next component about this is, or the next component of this conversation is, I believe Renata, oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, it's Bonica and Renata. So we'll kind of put you together there. And we're going to talk, they're going to talk about what they've done, kind of what they see are the problems, what they've done, and how you on this call can help them. So I'll let
So-
you take it from here, Renata.
Okay.
Well, actually, I think Fawn and Alonzo, they're next.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yes, yes. So living near the airport. I'm sorry, skip the joint. So yes, so Fawn and Alonzo, tell us a little bit about what you're facing right now.
Okay, good evening. First of all, thank you all for having us. This is an honor to be able to come on here and speak with you all tonight. I wanted to just share what we go through on a daily basis. First of all, we live on an inherited property, and we've been here for about 7 years now. But I grew up in Brown Grove. This was my grandparents' home place, so it's always been home to me. Alonzo's family is also in Brown Grove. So, you know, growing up, I can piggyback off of what Charles and Diane spoke about. Back in the day, I remember coming over to my grandparents' house and riding bikes and picking berries and all of that. And the airport was developed in the 70s, but as a child, I never remember seeing anything that had to do with Hanover Municipal Airport. And now, same house is literally right next door. All of the trees are now gone. We have airplanes and private jets going over our heads on a daily basis. The noise is unbearable at times. And it's growing. The airport is expanding their runway. They asked us if, well, we had 2 huge trees in the front yard, which we're on the left side of the airport. But the airport contacted us to see if they could cut down our 2 trees because they were blocking the air traffic. We did agree, however, to allow them to cut them down because, quite frankly, the trees were old and that would be an expense that we wouldn't have to incur. So we did allow the cutting down of the trees. However, after it was done, I felt that that was part of my heritage, being here in this home, and we've always had those trees hovering over this house. So that's one thing. And then, you know, with the growth of the airport, you know, as Diane mentioned earlier, a lot of the homes are now gone from this road. They've expanded, they've widened the runway, and they're now trying to expand it. So it kind of leaves us, well, right now we're literally the only house in the back on the other side of the runway. So it kind of leaves us in the middle of nowhere, so to speak. And we already have a lot of traffic that we deal with, and with Wegmans coming and other industries that are in the comprehensive plan for Hanover, this area of Hanover County, we are being hit hard. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to my husband so he can speak more about the traffic.
So on a daily basis, we have, I couldn't even tell you the amount of trucks that we have on Ash Cake Road and Lewistown Road. Ash Cake Road is a 2-lane road. If you got a school bus and a tractor trailer going by, they almost touch with low shoulders. VDOT never come clean the ditches. The road constantly floods. On Ash Cake Road, the speed limit is 45. In front of the Brown Grove Baptist Church, I couldn't tell you how many accidents there have been over the years. No fatal, thank God. And it is a curvy road, and then people are running 45 miles per hour constantly, or more. 95 gets crowded on Saturdays and Sundays. We can barely get out of our driveways. There are accidents all the time at the intersection of Lewistown Road and Ash Cake Road and Sliding Hill Road and Ash Cake Road. It's really becoming hard to live here. And then with Wegmans coming, you have on Ash Cake Road, you have 700 additional cars on Ash Cake Road, which is already crowded and congested enough. So.
I would like to point out, thank you, Lakshmi, for adding that comment into the chat. We are so used, I think unfortunately, we're so used to the pollutants that are emitted from the airplanes that go overhead. When Lakshmi and some of the redress members came here to visit us, they mentioned as soon as they stepped out of the car, they could actually feel the pollutants in the air. And, you know, we're again so used to it that this is what we're breathing in on a daily basis. Not good, you know. So with this upcoming distribution center and with all of the other trucks, like Alonzo mentioned, traffic and everything else that's going to be coming in, it's just going to get worse.
And are you already seeing an increase in traffic? There's a lot of housing communities that are being built along Ash Cake Road. So have you seen an increase in traffic with that as well?
We mostly see, well, we've seen an increase in traffic on a daily basis, but mostly when 95 backs up, typically on the weekends or during holiday peak seasons. When 95 backs up, people take Ash Cake Road as an alternate route, Route 1 and Ash Cake Road, and the traffic is unbearable. Actually, Deacon Spurlock, one of the deacons at our church at Brown Grove, he mentioned it took him, an hour to get home from town one evening because the traffic was so heavy, and he lives right in Ashland. So we are already experiencing a spike in traffic, yes.
And we have an interesting question here. Has Brown Grove been nominated for Preservation Virginia's most endangered historic places? So have you heard of that? Okay.
We were,
so,
can you hear me? Are you able to hear me? Oh, okay.
Yes.
We were put, Melissa Hartman with Razor, she did register us for, well, put an application in for the National Trust for Historic Preservation, but we were denied that. But the Virginia one, I don't think that we applied for that one.
Yeah. Okay, so it looks like we submitted a letter of intent, but it did not make the final cut. So if there's anybody on this call who's been successful in making that happen, please, make sure you leave your email address somewhere. We'd love to chat with you, see how you did that. All right. So, okay, so, all right. So again, if you've been successful, please leave your direct message, Renata, myself, whomever, with your email address so we can follow up with you on that one. All right. So moving along.
Thank you, Tina.
Oh, no, thank you. So you've heard a little bit, and Alonzo and Fawn they really just scratched the surface on some of the stuff that they're personally experiencing, living by the airport. But there's so many things that the community is going to experience. They're already experiencing and definitely will experience if Wegmans is able to complete their distribution facility. And make no mistake, it is a distribution facility. It is not a grocery store. So if you hear someone say it's a grocery store, please correct them. That is not the case. So Uh, so Monica, are you on the call?
Bonica is not on the, well, she had to go charge her phone.
Yes,
Oh, she
I'm
is?
actually, can you hear me? 1 second.
Hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I do
There we go.
apologize. As soon as you said my name, Tina, my parents called and they're actually watching, so I'm not sure why they're calling, but hey, I'm so sorry about that. Yes, I'm here. And thank you so much for having us. I didn't hear your question. You asked the question. I do apologize.
Oh, so, the question we had was what has been done so far, but I think also it'd be helpful if you talked a little bit more to some of the potential issues the community fears will happen with the distribution center being built. So I know in some of the conversations we've talked about the roads, talked about air pollution. So if you could talk a little bit about that, that'd be great as well.
Okay. I can speak on that, and also I can speak on things that were done prior to Wegmans even coming on board, because we've been, the community itself has been fighting against industrial encroachment really since the early 90s. Before then, our ancestors, our relatives, back then, we're not like too far removed from the Jim Crow era, where, Black folk were afraid to speak up when things, were being done to them because they were afraid of retaliation. Homes being burned down, churches burned down, their lives. So, we have a lot of elderly people that are in the community that have that mindset of, well, they're going to do what they want to do anyway. There's nothing we can do about it. They're so used to having things done to them that they're not used to speaking up. So, growing up, I've, seeing these things happen, because I've lived in this community all my life. Seeing these things happen, it didn't resonate with me because we've been, I guess I was so used to having like the air park sort of melting into the backyard, or us having to deal with the trucks and things of that nature. It's just gotten much worse. But when we saw that Wegmans was coming through, we were like, whoa, this is like major. This is, and when we heard about it, everything had been, already advanced and put into place because they kept the whole thing quiet. The project, it was called Project Tiger. And this was something that was, I guess, created. That name was created by our board of supervisors. The governor is on board with this project because the state is also giving millions to Wegmans in incentives. Our county is giving millions to Wegmans in incentives. So, we have a governor and our county, all our local officials, everybody's fully vested in this. What I see as far as potential damages, so if you look at having a facility in a community such as Brown Groves that is the size of the Pentagon, what we foresee, okay, you're going to have 700 employees. And on top of employees, you're also going to have, vendors coming in to, bring their products to this distribution center. So it's not just going to be Wegmans trucks. It's going to be trucks from whoever they buy produce from, whoever, whoever they're buying products from. So it's going to be, traffic times 10 of what we already see. So we got traffic concerns. We got concerns about our water right now. We are on a well system. I live on Egypt Road, which is my property is attached to the Wegmans property. I can go and stand out my back door and I can see where they cleared all the trees. So we are that close. We will be able to see the lights. We will be able to see the building. They're clearing out everything. Everything is just flat. So, you know, the things that, so we're looking at water pollution, even though that they're saying that there will be no water pollution. I'm trying to figure out how they have no way of how they have, how can you not have any type of pollution when you're going to have vehicles coming through? We're going to have, you know, the emissions from the trucks. There's like a multitude of things that are going to occur that are going to affect air quality of life, on top of the, you know, the traffic. So these are things that, you know, I guess living in this community, it's like we're going to be, I mean, the only word that I can think of for it is that we're going to be basically decimated. You know, it's going to destroy our community. And, you know, once they build a facility of that size, they're going to have hotels for, you know, because it's also going to be like not just employees that are driving the trucks, but also administrative employees will be located at that building. So you're going to have and they have people from corporate that are coming down that are already going to transfer there. So this is going to be like a second headquarters for them. This is their largest facility. So, you know, and once you get all these employees and all these trucks, you're going to have more gas stations, convenience stores. I mean, it's just going to open the door for so many different things. And our county and our state have designated this area as a, what was the name of it, Renata, that they called it on the comprehensive plan?
Sliding Hill Economic Zone.
Yeah, the Sliding Hill Economic Zone, because we are located in a triangle. We are in the confines of that triangle. The triangle consists of we have I-95, then we have Lewistown Road and Sliding Hill Road, which connects to Ashcake Road, which is the road, one of the main roads for Brown Grove. So this area, this land around here is very highly sought. The land in their communities has been changing from agriculture and residential to light industrial and what is it, M1, and I can't think of the other one off the top of my head, but everything's changing over to commercial. So as we see property where people are picking up and moving, or either they're just not, when people are passing on and their land is inherited by their descendants, they are not wanting to come back to Brown Grove because I don't want a landfill right across the street from me. I don't want the cement facility to be my neighbor. And you can see their trucks and all the dust and everything, you know, right at your back door. You know, people here have, you know, it's almost as if this whole thing with, you know, with the traffic and everything that, with all the buildings and everything that are coming up in the community, it's like, you know, the people that live here are an afterthought. You know, we don't have any protections here because our local government, they're just, like Diane said, it's profit over people. So, you know, that's what we're facing. You know, back in 1995, a group of people were, that piece of land that Wegmans is currently on, a group of people, Motorola was actually trying to build a facility there, a small facility. And there were some folks from the church and from the community that got together to say, like, whoa, wait a minute. This is going to impact our community. We already have, you know, why is this being built here rather than, you know, you have all this land over at the airport. And so what happened, Hanover County agreed with the community of Brown Grove to, well, first they didn't recognize us as a community, and we actually had to create a civic association to establish ourselves as a community, because when we first asked them, like, hey, we need your help, we need your protection, this is going to affect their traffic, you know, it's going to affect their quality of life. So they said, well, you guys, what do you mean Brown Grove community? There's no such thing as a Brown Grove community. So we actually had to establish ourselves in writing as a community. We had to get a map drawn up to show our boundaries, and all that. And so after we went through all that paperwork, we were finally recognized by the county, and the county agreed to certain protections for our community, such as there can not be a building over, I want to say it was 3 stories or 4 stories high. I don't have the proffers directly in front of me. I actually just had them, but they went off my screen. What were the other ones? That the type of businesses there could only be light commercial, such as, let's say, if someone was opening a auto mechanic shop, or what do you call it, like a locksmith, or you know, just small, you know, businesses like that. Nothing such as this distribution center. So the county agreed to, and they also agreed to keep that land as labeled as M1, which is light industrial. So when Wegmans came along, Air County said, you know, hey, here are the proffers, you know, have at them. They had a blank check to go and do whatever they wanted to do. And it's like, you know, the promises that our government, local government, made to us were just thrown out the window. So, and they went after Wegmans. Wegmans didn't come after them, because Wegmans wasn't even looking at property here at first. But when they were looking at property in the town of Ashland, and when Ashland wouldn't play their game, and they were like, no, this isn't going to be good for our, you know, for our town. Hanover was like, hey, we want you, you know, we got some land over here that you would love, you know. So, you know, that's what we have been fighting against. And, you know, so it's not like we've been complacent all these years. You know, we have been fighting against it. It's just that we haven't been successful at you know, getting the, you know, any help from our local government, you know. So I don't know if you want to speak, Bernarda.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I just wanted to go over so far what we have done as a community to stop this encroachment and stop Wegmans from coming in, along with Protect Hanover, who's also fighting alongside with us. We've called many various lawmakers to work with us, including Delegate Guzman, Delegate Rasul, Senator McClellan, and we've also had a small protest at the Wegmans Shopping Center in Henrico. Wegmans found out about it from our Facebook page, and they had the Henrico police there waiting for us, but they were accommodating to us. So everything went fine with the protest that we had. We do have a lawsuit along with the NAACP and Protect Hanover against the Water Control Board and DEQ for an inaccurate application. So that is pending. However, we did have an injunction that we had also filed to stop the construction, because construction, they have cleared some of the land. So we did have an injunction to stop the construction until our lawsuit goes to court. We don't have a court date yet. However, we just found out yesterday that our injunction was denied. So we don't know where the next steps are as far as that is concerned. We were successful in getting no-through trucks on Ashcake and Atlee Station, and we are trying to get Peaks and New Ashcake Road also designated no trucks in that area. We have Charles Morris, he filed a Title VI complaint with the EPA. I don't know how he feels, but he doesn't feel too successful about that. We did have a Washington Post article, and once we had the Washington Post article, Wegmans' ears went up, and that's when they wanted to start talking to us. And it was only then that they wanted to start talking to us. So we did have, further down, we did end up going to a settlement with them. However, they decided they no longer wanted to settle. In that settlement, we definitely had some environmental protections that would help the community and protect those that would be, well, just to protect the community. But all of those things are off the table. So we've had numerous media articles. We've also talked with the Environmental Justice Advisory Council. And I do believe that the members that are on the advisory council, they do intend to do good. However, they only have the governor's ear once a year. So we've also recently had a sit down with our Board of Supervisors member. One of the members, we have two Board of Supervisors that represent Brown Grove, one for one side of the Brown Grove, and then on Ashcake Road, and another representative for the other side. And one of them recently passed. He's been sick for a while, but we did have a meeting with Faye Pritchard, and that seemed to be successful. We had a retreat with the community to get more involvement from the community with the African American Redress Network, and another organization, I can't remember the name of it. I'm gonna have to go back to, it's a long name. So if Linda, if you can put that in the chat, the name of the organization with Virginia. So that retreat was very successful. It was a 2-day retreat, and we were able to get more community involvement. And I can't say that the community involvement stuck, but I think they gained a little bit more knowledge about what was going on and what the Brown Grove Preservation Group was doing. And we kind of were able to have a long-term plan for the community. We also had have been doing a survey in the community. We started that in the beginning. We went door to door to survey the community as far as their health, the effects of their health, where their health stands now, and trying to get a comparison of the effects of living near an airport and a concrete facility and all of those things, how many people have cancer and the ages and the grandkids that come to the house every day that the grandparents keep. So we have that, and we're finalizing that. And as Diane said, we are in the process of finalizing our historic district resignation on a national level. And we did apply for the National Trust for Historic Preservation. However, we did not make that. We pushed the Army Corps of Engineers and Wegmans to do GPR on the property. And we're working with anthropologists who is known for the discovery of the slave burial ground in Manhattan, Dr. William Blakely. He's a professor at William and Mary. So we want him to, he has agreed to be on site when they do the GPR. However, Wegmans is not agreeing to pay him. They want to pay their own person who does not have the experience in doing the GPR work. We're also working closely with the NAACP, League of Conservation Voters, Virginia Climate Action Network, African American Redress Network, coming to the table now, SCLC, Virginia Environmental Justice Collab, and RAZAR. And so right now what we need is your help because we're a small group and we are definitely overwhelmed. Along with our full-time jobs and taking care of kids and COVID and everything else that comes along with your daily life, trying to answer all of these emails and everything. So we're asking that you can share our GoFundMe link, which is in the chat, to help with our historic designation consulting firm fees. And that we know that doesn't legally provide protections, but it's definitely a deterrent from another business coming into our community, knowing that it's a historic African-American community.
All right. Well, thank you all for everyone who's attended this evening. So again, we're going to stick on for another 15 minutes for Q&A. So if you have questions, drop them in the chat. And we will get those answered. We still have quite a few people still on the call.
Tina, while we're waiting for the Q&A, if I could say, when Renata was speaking earlier about the retreat we did for the community, the group that also sponsored us, when she was trying to think of the name, they're the International Center for Transitional Justice. Along with them and the African American Redress Network, we were able to have a very successful event for the community. They pulled out the red carpet. We even had a caterer. They hired a local caterer to feed us breakfast and lunch. And then we also had a caterer from the Washington, D.C. area that came all the way down here. And the event was wonderful. We also wanted to thank the NAACP for and the Protect Hanover group, which is the group that we work very closely with, because basically the Protect Hanover group is the group of people that are located on the Sliding Hill Road side of us. Those subdivisions where they're going to be affected just as bad as we are. They formed a group called Protect Hanover. So, we've been working closely with, those organizations. The NAACP actually came to us and agreed to pay our legal fees. So we've been so blessed. So I just wanted to recognize those groups for everything that they've done for us, as well as all the other groups. I saw Elle was on here, and some of the other folks, and of course, coming to the table, and I already mentioned the African American Redress Network and RAZAR, and so just wanted to reiterate that we appreciate everything.
So I don't see a lot of chat questions, so my assumption might be that folks don't necessarily like the chat questions. So if you could put your hand up, I'm looking through the
it helps
participants.
if you would use the mechanical hand, which is under reactions at the bottom of your screen, for people on a laptop. And you click on reactions and then click on raise hand. And that way it's much easier to see than having to scroll through participants. Tammy.
All right.
Tammy,
very good. Thank you. I unmuted myself, but I wasn't going to speak until I raised my hand. So I'm driving, so I didn't put my video on or anything like that. I'm just coming back from a funeral in West Virginia, but I wanted to hop on and at least listen this way. So, so my name's Tammy Billups, and I live in Forest Lake Hills. And And of course, I've been just devastated as soon as I heard about this Wegmans. You know, to be honest with you, at first, when I very first, you know, heard about Wegmans, I thought, oh, this isn't going to be that bad. You know, I was thinking employees type of thing. And then, of course, the more I started hearing about the size of it, the impact it was going to be on our community, I've been fighting it ever since. And especially because not just Brown Grove, but just the traffic that is just going to be horrendous on these roads, and the air pollution, the water, like you mentioned, we're all on wells and septic. I mean, we are in Forest Lake Hills. And so, and you know, I don't think people can really like wrap their head around the size of this. The size, when you say the size of the Pentagon, I don't know how many people have been to the Pentagon, but it's ginormous. It's huge. And so when I was listening to people backing up and the trees have already been, you know, taken down, and I just think, oh my gosh, you know, once it's done, it's done. You can't take it back. You can't take it back. And we're not talking about a grocery store. As a matter of fact, Hanover County doesn't qualify, the demographics don't qualify for a Wegmans grocery store. But they can come in here with a distribution center. We can qualify for that kind of devastation and travesty in our community, but we don't qualify for a Wegmans grocery store. And I wrap your head around that. So with that said, what's our connection? And I don't know this from this group's perspective, but I do know that, you know, Foxhead has some people there on that Facebook, which is how I found out about this meeting, this Zoom meeting. As a matter of fact, I was supposed to hold a meeting tonight for Forest Lake Hills. I'm like, you know what? I'm putting that on the back burner till next week because I want to jump in on this Zoom meeting. So I know Rob Morgan, you know, he's got some lawsuits pending as well, hoping to stop, you know, or being involved in this. So I know that they're also fighting, you know, tooth and nail. So are you all connected with that, with those folks as well?
Rod was actually on the call earlier, but I don't see them on here anymore. But they have the Protect Hanover group. They have a separate zoning lawsuit that is, I think they had lost it and then they appealed. So I think they're in the appeal phase right now. And then us together, we have, along with NAACP, we have the lawsuit against the Water Control Board and the DEQ.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, and we are if it wasn't for the Protect Hanover group with Kathy and Chris and Rod, we you know, wouldn't be where we are today because they have been a huge help to us. We've been working together for the last 2 years. So they're like we're like brothers and sisters now with them. So we meet with them when we need to. We stay in touch through text message, email, and all that good stuff. And it's one thing that I wanted to point out to everyone that's still on this call. I know that we you know, our major, one of the main things we talked about was environmental justice, but you know, there have been some things that have happened early on that were just not right. Because, you know, at first when they were doing this project, it was back in October of 2019 when they were trying to sell the land, and there was a wetlands delineation done, and it said that there was approximately 16 acres of wetlands that was going to be destroyed. Then it was changed, and I think it was December, it was done the wetlands delineation was done again, and all of a sudden it was dropped down to about, what was it, about 6 acres, I think it was, 5 or 6 acres. I don't know the specific numbers.
It was dropped. It was dropped.
Yeah, it was like more than cut in half, you know. And so that meant that it would make it look like it was less of an impact on the environmental part, you know, on the wetlands. So there was such an outcry from the Protect Hanover group and the Brown Grove group that, you know, we were talking to, was mostly Rod and Chris and Kathy, the Protect Hanover group, all those people. They were, you know, were getting it out there in the media saying, hey, this isn't right. Where did all these wetlands disappear to? So the DEQ and Army Corps of Engineers were forced to go back and look at this and say, hey, yeah, what happened to these wetlands? Yeah, there really are going to be like 16 acres that are going to be impacted. So that was one thing that was, and to me, looking at that, I can't accuse nobody of doing anything that's not proper, but how did those wetlands disappear in that short period of time when you have the same company doing the wetlands delineation? So, I mean, it was just baffling to me. So, and what we found out is that the Army Corps of Engineers and DEQ, they don't do the, they just take whoever applies for an application to get a permit from them, they take them for their word with everything that's on the application. The second thing that we are disputing that has not been addressed is the fact that the property, there was another property that was just as suitable for this project, but and it was located, it's still in Hanover County in the town of Ashland. Well, I'm sorry, right outside of Ashland, but still in the town of Ashland. And they didn't want to, that piece of property was more expensive. So it was, there was some, the numbers on the application were, I'm just gonna say they were erroneously inflated to make it look like this property here in Hanover was going to be the better property and less of an environmental impact. And that was when doing the whole lead process, less environmentally destructive to, you know, the property. So those are some things that we actually didn't really touch on, but they are definitely big factors in this whole thing. That's the part that the Protect Hanover group has been fighting against, those things, the environmental and technical parts of it.
Huh. Well, I'm suspect to anything these days.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, yeah, it's a shame, but so who, like, you did mention some people that you've got that you're talking with as far as some political clout. So what were the names that you were talking with?
I'll let Renata answer that one.
We have been working with Delegate Guzman and Senator Jennifer McClellan and Delegate Russell, but mostly with Delegate Guzman and Jennifer McClellan.
And Rachel, well, I don't know if Rachel Levy was she?
Yes, Rachel Levy.
Yeah.
She is she's running for delegate for Hanover County, Ashland District.
Okay. And so most of these are like local folks that are going to be running or have this will run?
They were running.
Okay.
In the previous election. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, they utilize their platform to uplift their cause.
Can I just add that we did reach out to Senator Mark Warner. He did show some interest initially at the front end. We're still trying to connect with him to see if we can get some pressure. He was instrumental in some other legislation in Virginia previously, and so he might be somebody good to put some pressure on. But I just want to say that one of the things I noticed, I recognize some of the people on this call, and in addition to doing the GoFundMe and spreading the word, I would just ask that any organization that's on this call that is embedded in Virginia and the Commonwealth and the politics, please use your clout. Use your position to press forward the need to preserve the history of Brown Grove. Yes, no doubt the environmental justice issues are significant, and those will impact everyone throughout the community, but the history of Brown Grove will be erased with this. And so I would urge everyone on this call who has a position in the Commonwealth, in your organization, look for the low-hanging fruit in your own organization, and how can you use your position to press for the need to preserve this history.